More, let's bring in Jared Mondschein, who's Director of Research at the United States Studies Center. He'll share some insights into Kamala Harris's performance. Hi there, Jared. Tell us, did that interview achieve the Democratic campaign's aim of getting Americans better acquainted with the Harris-Walz ticket and what they actually stand for?
I think it definitely got the Harris campaign to show more media for them. I think more than anything else, though, it also did not really raise any major red flags for her. I think the Democratic campaigns, including the Biden campaign before the Harris campaign, were always worried and holding their breath with these interviews. Would President Biden stumble? Would he make mistakes? Would he mix up names or facts or figures? And at this point, it looks like this interview did not really shed any new light on her policy platforms in any particular way, but it definitely was not one that they need to shy away from either. This was in many ways an opportunity for her to be in a more friendly environment. After all, it was CNN, not Fox News or a more conservative outlet, and it was an opportunity for her to basically recite well-known talking points, whether it be on Gaza or immigration or on the child tax credit. So it was a safe space for her, and it was one where she didn't make any mistakes or any major foibles that will, sort of go viral in the way that they often did with Biden interviews before her.
And the latest poll shows that the Harris-Walz campaign is widening its lead over Trump-Vance. And you just alluded to that. TV interviews do matter, don't they, Jared? After all, that last TV debate between Biden and Trump started his unraveling for the White House. How can the Harris-Walz campaign build on this first interview for the rest of their journey to November?
I think they're going to do exactly what they've been doing, which is really, as your colleague said, continue to coast on the theme of the vibes and themes of personality, and less of a focus on policy platform or specific policies, and instead more personality, trying to show that Harris is an experienced set of hands and will not be divisive and will not, have social media tirades, but instead be a comfortable set of hands for Americans to trust the office of the presidency. And I think that would probably mean that if we see any more sit-down interviews, that they will most likely be similar to what we just saw with that CNN interview, where she doesn't really break any news with new policy platforms, but instead continues to hammer home her key election themes of stability, of more moderate positions than what she maybe ran on in 2019 in the Democratic presidential primaries, as well as a turning the page and being a fresh face, but a safe face and a safe pair of hands for Americans to trust that they will not have more uncertainty with her, but instead more common sense legislation. And they will continue to juxtapose that sense of normalcy that they want to show with what they call weird and what they call deranged for the Trump campaign, and saying that we don't want to go back to that is what we're going to continue to hear from Harris, and instead we're going to be continuing steady hands, but also a new face.
And the other safe pair of hands possibly is the VP Tim Walz. At this point, he's the VP nominee. He's also had to defend himself in that interview against accusations regarding his resume, his background. Did you see more insight into what he might offer as VP if the Democrats do win this?
What Walz offers is, on one hand, a lot of folks were really concerned about how progressive he was. He was sort of the most progressive of the finalists for the VP's search. But at the same time, on the other hand, he is also someone who visually and rhetorically is a well-known and I think accomplished figure. He is someone who I think did pretty well in terms of handling the accusations that he misspoke about his military record. And, he highlighted that his wife is an English teacher, and she always corrects him on his grammar, and this is just one more instance of that. And I think the visuals of who he is something that the Harris campaign is hoping will win out over maybe the finer points of his rhetoric. the visuals of this Midwestern dad who knows how to fix a pickup truck and coach a football team, they're hoping will be more powerful than the nitpicky nature of trying to fact check politicians. After all, we're in an election where fact checks, it's not really clear, have all that much power over the views of voters and their politicians. And so they're hoping that that visual image of Tim Walz, the Minnesota governor in plaid and comfortable with every aspect of the rural life, is going to win out over maybe some fact checks.
And Jared, how do you suppose Donald Trump's campaign will be scrutinizing this Harris CNN interview ahead of their debate next month? Outside of her policy explanations, she brushed him off as an erratic old man. That's something he could exploit, right?
Well, I think the age thing is definitely something that used to be a Democratic liability, but is now a Republican liability. Now that Donald Trump is the oldest man to be to run for office and be at the top of a ticket and on the ballot in November. So I think what we're going to see from the Trump campaign, though, is, on one hand, it's a question because they've been changing their messaging, especially Donald Trump has been changing his message about Kamala Harris. But I think more than anything else, what we're seeing in these early days is the accusation of flip-flopping. Kamala Harris in 2018, when she ran against Joe Biden and a number of other Democrats for the presidential nomination, she really ran a more progressive campaign than where Biden was and where the Biden administration has gone. And that, whether that be on Gaza and the Middle East, or whether that be on fracking, I think what we're going to continue to see is Harris saying, I have not flip-flopped, but as she said in the interview, my values have stayed the same, though my policy positions have shifted. Whereas the Trump campaign will say, no, this is not right. She's actually a progressive, trying to pretend like she's a moderate. And so those accusations that she is a left-wing progressive from San Francisco who doesn't understand heartland American issues will be something that will continue to dominate Republican attacks on her for the foreseeable future.
Jared Mondschein, thank you very much for your insight. Jared is Director of Research at the United States Studies Center.